Okay, kind of starting back on this analysis. Last time we left off talking about, well, a couple of videos ago, we talked about the funeral or the pineapple, talked about some the funeral things things that stood out with the funeral, and a little bit of the facial inconsistencies or issues that we saw, and then the voice on the 911 call sort of discussion there, and just been kind of going back and analyzing the behavior or what Burke is saying versus what his parents have said. So, can jump right in.
Now return to Dr. Phil's exclusive interview with Burke Ramsey.
JonBenét's little 10-year-old brother is also in the spotlight. Neither John or Patsy Ramsey have submitted to an official police interrogation, but a statement from young Burke Ramsey is now said to be part of the official record. 10-year-old Burke was videotaped recently as he was interviewed by a Department of Social Services approved psychiatrist.
You went to see a child psychologist. Do you recall that?
Another contribution by Basil. And once again, thank you for being a member of the channel. It says, thanks, Cato. This case needs to be resolved and you're doing great work. I'm trying. I'm not saying I have all of the answers, but I'm definitely trying to get down what I can. And if nothing else, just trying to present the information that I have. So thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for contributing, both monetarily and through the comments. And hope you enjoy this next video.
Yeah.
You supposedly were asked to draw a picture of your family. Said you drew a picture of yourself and your mom and your dad, but you didn't draw JonBenet. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Unbeknownst to the Ramsey family, the police went in to where Burke was staying with a relative and told the relative that the Ramseys had given them permission to interview Burke. It's an absolute lie.
We kept here because we wanted to look at some tape and kind of get your reactions to some of these things.
To be fair, we don't know if that's true. We don't know if the cops said, oh, you know, John has given us or Patsy has given us permission. We don't know that.
This was 13 days after JonBenet's murder. Nobody in the world has seen this before.
Oh, I think. What your mom did? What is mom? What do you like about your mom? That's it? What your mom was her mom make this process? Yeah. Anything else in your family?
This is the first time you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
When you see that, do you remember it?
Yeah. I remember the room.
Yeah.
I think I didn't know it was a psychologist.
So at the time you're 9, and the observations that were leaked to the press was that it was unusual that you felt safe, that you showed little warmth towards the family, that you displayed an enormous lack of emotion and almost an indifference, and you had difficulty opening up about the family, similar to children who feel that there are things they shouldn't say. To a father, a mother, yourself, JonBenet was not in the picture at all. And you said that you were, quote, getting on with life. You remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that.
What do you think about those observations?
Watching the video, I think I look like a normal kid. I think maybe that's just my personality, is that I'm a little like reserved.
When Burke was asked to draw a picture of his family, he did exactly that. Mom, Dad, and Burke. Because that's the only family he had when he was asked to draw the picture. But it was inferred that he didn't include JonBenet because he killed her.
Did you consciously not?
Either he killed JonBenet or he didn't. I mean, or no, that's not what I'm trying to say. Either he drew JonBenet or he didn't. There's no we're not inferring anything. Did you or did you not draw your sister? That's where we're stopping at. We're not inferring that he killed anyone. We're not doing it. Did you or did you not draw your sister? And leave it there. If you did not draw your sister, seeing that it was so fresh, what you could have done was drawn your sister as an angel. You didn't include her at all. Nothing about JonBenet for you is included.
Draw JonBenet.
Coming up. Dr. Phil's exclusive interview with Burke Ramsey continues.
Interrogation tapes of a 9-year-old Burke speaking to a psychologist at the Boulder Police Department just 13 days after JonBenet's death have been kept under lock and key for 20 years. They have never been made public, and Burke had never seen them until we watched them together. While Burke was watching the tapes, I was watching him.
First person you would draw would be. Oh, I got. Okay.
Did you consciously not draw JonBenet?
I don't really remember what was going through my head, but she was gone, so I didn't draw her.
There's a second clip, and you're going to talk about actually JonBenet's death to this psychologist. Take a look.
What do you think happened to your sister?
It's not lost on me that he said she was gone, so I didn't draw her. And he just shrugged. He went as if it's like, it's not that you have, and that's what I'm saying. Some of the things it's not that you have to draw her. Okay. I think people will be fine with that. It's like, it's a little weird, but the way you handle it so many years later, when you're quite aware, even when you're aware that you're under scrutiny for this, your behavior doesn't change. It's like, I didn't care then, and I'm not worried about it now. And so you just do the Jordan shrug. She wasn't there, so I didn't draw her. We're not talking about somebody showing up late to a party. We're talking about a human being that was brutally heinously. That's what we're talking about. And this man just did the Jordan shrug. This is something that you don't have to do. I would never, if I'm talking about my brother, do a Jordan shrug. I wouldn't. Because why? Because this is a serious moment. And if somebody says, hey, you didn't draw your brother, man, I don't know, man. I don't know what I was thinking. I just, I don't know. I think the weight of it was heavy on me. So it's just, I just didn't, I guess I didn't think about it, but, kind of think about it now, I think I was just overwhelmed. There's like no, when you do stuff like that, there's no response or any follow-up to say, as an adult though, I think that there's none of that. It's like Burke is in this perpetual sort of childlike state to where he thinks that he can just answer things And that's that. There's no explanation needed. That's that. There's no necessity for maturity in the answer. I just answer it how I want to answer it, and that's that.
Well, I asked them but my dad said I think someone
What do you think you're saying there?
Well, I mean, she's asking me what happened to my sister. Like, well, she was killed. And she keeps kind of going deeper. She's like, well, like, what do you think happens? And I'm like, you know what happened? She was killed. And she asked me what I think. And so I guess theorizing what happened. And I think I felt a little awkward talking about it. And I think it was just something that I thought everyone knew.
You see it? Right there. He followed up. So Dr. Phil is asking, hey, what do you think? Da, 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 da. Now he feels the need to clarify himself. But before, when he's responding to the criticism around not drawing JonBenet, and people are like, hey, what the heck is wrong with you? He doesn't feel the need to respond and follow up to the follow up and respond to the criticism. But when it comes to protecting himself and, hey, we're getting down to the nitty gritty now, and we're asking what happened. And this is what you said. Now he feels the need to respond and follow up and clarify his statements. To me, this is a very chilling moment. I'm not going to lie to you. This is a chilling moment because Burke, very relaxed, he's not quiet and indifferent here, in a sense. I would almost say that he's not quiet. We know that. He's not reserved. Burke is not, this is anything but reserved. This is 13 days later.
Made public, and Burke had never seen them until we watched them together. While Burke was watching the tapes, I was watching him.
first person you withdraw would be. Oh, I get.
So I think he drew his dad first, and he drew his mom, and then himself.
Did you consciously not draw JonBenet?
I don't really remember what was going through my head, but she was gone, so I didn't draw her.
There's a second clip, and you're going to talk about actually JonBenet's death to this psychologist. Take a look.
What do you think happened to your sister?
I forgot he said that.
Well, I asked them but my dad said I
I've told you guys several times, there are just things that are said and ways that sentences are phrased and questions that are asked that throw me off, because these questions and these sentences get right to the point. They don't waste any time. They get right to the point. They get straight to the point. And that's what throws me off. And I was talking about how Patsy was one of the main ones when they said about, on two occasions with Patsy that I'm remembering, I think at this moment, was when they asked about the pineapples, and Patsy got serious, is what it seemed like in the interviews. she got serious and she started asking, what did they find the time of death? And then she started asking questions, you know, Patsy and John seem very aloof, you know, "Oh, I don't know anything about this. Nobody's told me anything. I just heard this here and there and the third." But when you start asking these critical questions about the pineapple, then all of a sudden they start offering really random things like, is it canned or is it fresh pineapple? Um, and I think John had asked something to the effect of, or I think it was either John or Patsy that asked something to the effect of, no, I think it was John who asked something to the effect of about digestion. How long would it take to digest or something like that? And you're kind of like, why would you like, because that's a question that you ask later on down the line. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying it's wrong to ask the question. I'm saying that that's a question that you kind of ask later on down the line. You got to ask a couple of questions, you know, a series of questions before you get to that question. But these are like, they're jumping directly to it. And so, like, say, for example, when we're talking about Patsy and we're talking about the, we're talking about, the pineapple being found in JonBenét's stomach, and she went to, you know, she said, well, was it gooey? What was it? Was it canned or was it fresh? So she's jumping straight to the point. A couple of questions that probably should have been in there before that was when they say, "Yep, we found the can of pineapple in her stomach." Okay, so you know, absolutely. Okay, so I'm sorry, we found pineapple in her stomach. Okay, what does that mean? What does the, you know, what the next question would have been, what does that mean? What does that lead us to? Um, what's the next steps? And how does that help us solve this crime? Um, how do we use this information? Because you really don't have anywhere to go when you ask about the pineapple. You really don't have anywhere to go. When somebody says, "Hey, that we found pineapple, this was the last thing she ate," you might start down the line of questioning or answering and say, "Okay, so I know I that's interesting then, because I know if you're a parent, you might say, I know I fed her this before. So we were at the party and I fed her this. And then she went over here. And that's interesting you say pineapple because we don't even have any pineapple in our house. Or if you know you have pineapple in your house, you might say, okay, that lets me know something because we have pineapple in our refrigerator. You know, we have canned pineapples, we have fresh pineapple. We have, you know, we have apples, we have oranges, you know what I mean? We have everything. So was it just pineapple or was it like a bunch of other things? Like those are things that you sort of dovetail into. You don't stick the landing on the pineapple and say, was it canned or was it fresh? That's not a regular question. Like, what would it matter? I'm not worried. Like, if somebody asks me that about if somebody says, hey, you know, your mom died and they found fresh pineapple in her stomach, I'm not asking, was it canned or was it fresh? That's not the first thing I'm asking. And that's why I'm saying why this is so weird. That's not the first thing I'm asking. I'm asking, so what does that indicate? That somebody that is that does that is telling so is that telling us when she died or what is that? What you know, what can we do with that information? Well, we're hoping that you can tell us when's the last time she ate. Well, we went out for pizza at this time, blah, 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 blah. And we stopped her at 9 o'clock and I dropped her off at 9:30. And, you know, she told me something about being hungry or something like that. But, you know, uh, I said, okay. So she probably went in her house and blah, blah. And my mom loves pineapple, you know, whatever, blah, blah. So she probably went and got something. So, you know, maybe she sat down and had time to, you know, she always locks her door. That's the conversation that follows, but they jump straight into it. And with Burke, like he's jumping straight into the thing that's weird to me is that when they ask him, what do you think happened? He said, I asked my dad where the body was, where he found the body. Where they found the body? Okay, let me know. You let me know. Where have you known a kid? Please help me understand. Where have you heard a kid say, where's the body? Please. I'm serious. I've never heard it. I've never heard a kid say, where did they find the body? I've never heard that be important to a kid, where the body was. And that concerns me a little bit. Because when we think about the autopsy and we think about JonBenet, and we think about the liver mortis and how the blood pooled, that might tell you something. And we're going to talk about that later, because Detective Arndt reported when John was bringing JonBenet up the stairs, she reported just the conditions of liver mortis. And obviously the autopsy talks about liver and rigor mortis and different scales and different levels and stuff like that. So that's very helpful. And when you break it down, you start to get a clearer picture of, what happened. But I think probably the most telling thing is in terms of, or one of the most telling things in terms of, piecing together this thing about JonBenet is the liver mortis. That's very intriguing to me, because the liver mortis tells you stuff about the length of time JonBenet was dead, and it may tell you about some of the interactions, I'll say it like that, some of the interactions that JonBenet was having prior to death, and then maybe some of the post-death, I don't want to say positioning, but some of the post-mortem activities. And so when somebody says, where did you find the body? It could be tied to this idea that the body was supposed to be non-discoverable. And he did it with his right arm. And what's interesting is that he does like that. They got mad at CBS because CBS had no proof. So I don't know why CBS did that. But CBS had brought in a kid to sort of reenact the part that they thought Burke played in the case. Like I said, none of it has been proven. So it's like, to do that is crazy. But if I remember correctly, they took the same swing. And this is the 8th of January, when they know nothing. And Burke is talking about, I know what happened. I think, or I asked my dad where he found her. He didn't say, I asked my dad what happened. They never discussed that. They never discuss. I'll go back in the transcripts and try to look. They never discuss what happened, what they think happened. That is never a discussion amongst the family. Burke doesn't say, I asked my dad what happened, because that's the first question you would ask. If somebody is, if somebody's saying this happened to your sister, the first question that you're going to ask is, or if somebody says this happened to your sister, the first question, what happened? Oh, your sister's dead. She's gone to heaven. What happened? The first question would not be, where's the body? Where'd you find it? That's a weird question, dude.
What do you think you're saying there?
Well, I mean, she's asking me what happened to my sister. Like, well, she was killed. And she keeps kind of going deeper. She's like, well, like, what do you think happens? And I'm like, you know what happened? She was killed. And she asked me what I would think. And so I guess theorizing what happened. And I think I felt a little awkward talking about it. And I think it was just something that I thought everyone knew. So it's like, why are you asking me about this again?
Right.
Some
Well, yeah, we know she was killed. I'm asking you what you think happened. Oh, she's killed. Yeah, I know that. What happened? Oh, I don't understand the question.
Times when the police feel they have figured out the timeline, something surfaces that just throws everything out the window. When the autopsy was completed, the coroner had discovered that there was undigested pineapple in JonBenét's stomach. Well, the police didn't even know there was pineapple. So they went back and they started to look at all the photographs. When did JonBenet eat the pineapple? Where did she eat the pineapple?
And police discovered fingerprints on a bowl of pineapple left in the family's dining room on the morning of the murder.
The significance of the pineapple bowl. What it tells us is that it was someone that JonBenet trusted that sat down and fed her that pineapple.
Well, about 18 months later, well, it's June 1990.
And as we said before, on one of the previous episodes, the bowl was closer to Patsy and Burke's chair. So whoever did this, whoever did it, they were smart enough to sit it over by, because let's see. Yes. Switch. Patsy would be to the Burke's here, JonBenét's here. John was over here by this little thing. I think would be to Burke's left. Okay, so this is Burke's chair. And I think John sat right here because Patsy was sitting to the right of Burke. JonBenet sitting here. So yes, this is Burke. This is Patsy. This is JonBenet. This is John. Now, this is in between Burke's chair and Patsy's chair. Hey, look, the behavior is going to be there. I know you're probably going to get mad at me, but the behavior is going to be there. Whoever this intruder was that JonBenet trusted, he sat somewhere in between here. Instead of sitting JonBenet, because JonBenet had to be fully awake, and Patsy is telling us in the interview that there are chairs that each part of the family member gravitates to. And Patsy is telling you Burke gravitates to this chair. JonBenet gravitates to this chair. Patsy, gravitate to this chair, and then John gravitates right here. But what we're being told is that this intruder who JonBenet trusted takes JonBenet down the stairs, right? To keep JonBenet quiet, he shocks her. Listen to me. Listen, just listen. He shocks her with a stun gun to knock her back out and put her to sleep. But then for some strange reason, he wakes her up to feed her pineapple. Interesting. Why would you knock her out with a stun gun only to take a few steps down the stairs and wake her up and feed her pineapple? Wouldn't you be afraid that she would scream now? Now that she's well aware something's wrong, something's going on. Oh, if I thought something was wrong back in my room and you were going to stun me, John said she would scream bloody murder. Unless it's somebody she knew. Right. If if we're being consistent with the behavior, then JonBenet would have sat right here if she was being fed pineapple and there was somebody that she knew. Because her behavior says, I like this chair. She would have sat there and ate her pineapple. But whoever, that means that the pineapple didn't belong to her. The pineapple belonged to someone else. And whoever was eating the somebody was sitting there eating the pineapple, hosting the pineapple. Whoever it was the host of the pineapple bowl. Because JonBenet wasn't fed pineapple. Whoever did this was sitting on this side eating pineapple. So they weren't giving JonBenet pineapple. They were eating pineapple, and JonBenet was in a way invited in to the experience of eating pineapple. Because this bowl, if they were feeding it to JonBenet, and JonBenet knew this person, JonBenet would have sat right here and enjoyed her pineapple. But whoever this was went to the other side of the table and sat here and started feeding her the pineapple. So either this person forced her on this side, because let me tell you something. If you pair this with the idea that the ransom note was written in the hallway on a pad in the hallway and left on the stairs that John and Patsy frequent 95% of the time, 98, 95% of the time, something like that. They said this person was brave enough to stand in the hallway and write the ransom note, knowing that John and Patsy could come downstairs at any given time. And that was 95% of the time where John and Patsy came downstairs. And then this person goes in the kitchen, digs around and finds pineapple and lets JonBenet sit down and eat pineapple. And the place where the pineapple is set down is in the space of no other than who? Patsy and Burke, whose fingerprints end up on the pineapple bowl in the tea glass. Patsy and Burke, whose fingerprints end up on the nightgown. Patsy and Burke, whose prints end up on the long johns. Patsy and Burke, who potentially wrote the note. Patsy. I wonder, because when we talk about the crime of Miss Jean Brodie, who was eating the pineapple and they're saying the spoon is too big for the children. But what if but if we know that Patsy enjoys the prime of Miss Jean Brodie with the cream and the pineapples, what if Patsy was eating this and sharing it with Burke? And JonBenet came down. She would have to go around here to enjoy something. Or Patsy would take a spoon and feed it to her. hey, here, babe. Here you go. Boom. But she probably wouldn't do that because she doesn't want to spill milk on the table. So JonBenet, come around here, babe, and just eat it out of here. And so we're talking about somebody sitting there that JonBenet is familiar with, and JonBenet takes just a few chunks, a chunk or two or something like that, and she goes on about her merry little way. JonBenet doesn't, she's not going to be, she can sleep in the morning if she wants to when her dad gets up to fly the plane, because John and Mike, and I'm not talking about Mike Bynum. I'm talking about, I can't remember his last name, but the other Mike that's going to help him fly the plane. They're going to take off together. And it's probably Mike is going to stay there at the vacation house with them because he helps John fly. And from what we know, it's going to be a 3-hour flight from probably about a 6-hour flight one way, because you got 3 hours in that plane to Minnesota, and then from Minnesota to Michigan, then you got another 2 hours. And I'm specifically saying that because from what I understand, the speed of that plane um, can probably, I don't know, go somewhere between, I think I think I calculated at like 277 miles per hour or something like that. And it was like 900 miles in between Minnesota. Yeah, it was like 900 miles in between. Maybe I'm tripping. Let me make sure, because we're talking about Minnesota. Minnesota Twins. Or we're talking about from Boulder, really is what we're talking about. We're talking about Boulder, Colorado to Minnesota. Particularly Minneapolis, yes. 929 miles. Yes. A normal flight would be 2 hours and 2 minutes. That's a normal flight. But I think commercial flights are flying at like 500, 400 to 500. I think it's knots or something like that. I can't remember the standard of measurement, but I just converted it to miles per hour. And anyways, the King C-90 Air that was being flown, if I remember correctly, could get anywhere between 235 to 271 miles per hour. Because I think it was a turbo, but I think the turbo could get like 290 miles an hour. No, I'm sorry, 271 miles an hour tops or something like that. And so that's 3 hours to, and I think it was from there, I guess I can check, Minneapolis to Charlevoix. Charlevoix. Charlevoix, Michigan. 561 miles from Minneapolis to Charlevoix. Okay. So the total trip, if you say 929 plus 561? Yeah, 561. That's 1,490 miles, almost 1,500 miles equal. And you divide it by 271. It's 5-6 hour flight. Yeah, it's 5-6 hour flight. That's what I'm telling you. So John just needs a little help to fly, and so he's probably going to fly 2.5 hours, and then Mike will get in and fly another 2.5 hours, so on and so forth, to whatever. So he's taking Mike to help him fly. So John's not worried. The kids can go to sleep on the plane if they want to. They're going to fall asleep on the plane if they need to anyway. Getting back to my original point, they can fall asleep on the plane if they need to anyway. That's not a problem. And so they could stay up all night. If Patsy was continuing to pack, they could stay up all night with no issues, no problem. And that's what I guess I'm saying, because this bowl of pineapple isn't all the way in Burke's chair in his direction. It's not all the way over here. It's actually closer to Patsy's chair. You know what I mean? So it could be the case that Patsy was enjoying this and sharing with Burke. And that would explain why the spoon is so big.
'98. You were interviewed by the police.
What was JonBenét's favorite snack? Some moms could have apples.
Yeah.
What else was your favorite snack?
Yeah. So he asks what her favorite snack is. Not attached to anything. Burke says, I don't think she had a snack before bed. That is, and see, that's what I'm saying. I didn't ask you that. I said, what's her favorite snack? I didn't attach it to anything, but Burke went ahead and answered the question. I don't think she had a snack before bed. I didn't ask you that. Something funny is going on here. Something funny is going on here.
Some moms could have apples.
Yeah.
What else was your favorite
But the question I was asked by the police, did she eat pineapple before?
And weirdly, Burke denies the pineapple, but says, that's all I know. I only know pineapple. You know, my sister doesn't enjoy anything else except pineapple.
Before she went to bed when you brought her home that night? And I said, no. JonBenet went to bed. She did not eat pineapple. And I guess they thought, well, that must be lying. Therefore, lying about other things.
I didn't put the ball there. Okay. I did not put the ball there. I would not do this.
Which prints belong to you?
They did. You sure?
Fingerprints on the bowl are Patsy's, according to police.
They did. You sure?
Lying about other things.
I didn't put the ball there. Okay. I did not put the ball there. I would not do this.
Which prints belong to you?
He said those prints belong to one of the two of you. And this is that interaction that we were talking about in the interview where he caught her in something.
They did. You sure?
Fingerprints on the bowl are Patsy's, according to police.
Now look what Patsy did when he caught her. She kind of goes, you sure? She gets quiet. Like we said in the previous analysis and stuff like that, when Patsy, they come to a place to where it's sort of undeniable and they get stuck and they have nothing else to say. Hold that. Don't go anywhere else. Stay right there. You cannot give them a way out. If you start talking, you give them a way out. Nope. I'm gonna stay right here. I'm not gonna help you. Help yourself out. Because if there's an honest or an innocent and an honest response, it'll show itself. Work out. Work your way out of this. Because you sat here and this is not the first time you've done this. You guys keep saying, I didn't touch this. I didn't see it. I had nothing to do with it. But then your fingerprints magically end up on this stuff. And then when we say your fingerprints are on this freaking thing, they are? Well, I didn't do it. Bro, y'all keep saying that, and I don't give a crap what you say. You keep saying your fingerprints are not on something. I don't care. I found your fingerprints and your fibers here. That counts for something. And when y'all start talking stupid, talking about, oh, the police only wanted to hone in on me. Yeah, dude, because your fingerprints, you're talking about you didn't serve her a bowl of pineapples. Because think about the statement, right? Patsy is saying, I didn't serve her pineapples on Christmas Eve. I didn't serve her pineapples early on Christmas morning. I didn't serve her pineapples for breakfast. I dang sure didn't serve her any pineapples before we went to the White's house. I didn't serve her any pineapples after we got to the White's house. And I didn't serve her no pineapples when we got home. So how does a bowl with your fingerprints on it and pineapples show up on the table? and a glass of tea with your fingerprints on it. Bro, criminals don't just walk around with tea bags in their backpack, ready to make some tea at the victim's house. What criminal, please, I'll wait, walks into a house, carries around tea bags, and walks around the house to be the wet bandits? And instead of their trademark being the wet bandits, their trademark is tea bags. I leave tea bags in people's glasses. I leave tea bags in people's glasses. What criminal? What criminal do you know? Google them, please, and get back to me. Walks in people's. I'm not talking about criminals who leave signature signs. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about criminals who do unnecessary things. Things that make no sense. I can understand leaving a signature like, oh, his thing is to leave red spatter on the wall. Okay, the same person. But when we get all the way down to somebody bringing tea bags and sticking tea bags in tea glasses and going around and grabbing the victim's hand because Patsy said she didn't do that. So like we said, it had to be the same thing. This intruder is mad efficient because this intruder at the same time walks up with the tea glass. He walks up with the Barbie nightgown. He walks up with the long johns. He takes the long johns off and says, I'm going to need these to frame Patsy and Burke. And he takes those and he walks up to Patsy. Patsy's knocked out. She's asleep. And he says, Miss Ramsey, can I bother you to use your fingerprints, please? Patsy's asleep. Oh, absolutely. Sure. Thank you. Click it on the pants. Click it on the Barbie nightgown in several places. And then click it on the bowl to just 4 items. Click it on the bowl all while John is knocked out. Click it on the bowl and then click it on the teacup or the tea glass. What intruder do you know is doing that? I'll wait. But that's what when people just leave it alone. No, this is the stuff we're talking about. Because you're trying to play with our intelligence. And you're saying that this intruder did all of this. Oh, the intruder could have come up and he could have grabbed the chair and he could have jumped through the way without touching the cobwebs. Please.
They did. You sure?
Fingerprints on the bowl are Patsy's, according to police, suggesting that she's the one who gave the fruit to her daughter. But if Patsy did give it to JonBenet and is lying about it, then investigators wondered, could she be lying about everything?
Do you remember drinking the iced tea around Christmas time?
If you
Christmas party. How long does food normally sit on your table?
What was more interesting was that next to that bowl, there was a glass of tea. And on that glass of tea was Burke's fingerprints.
Would you leave it there for a long period of time? I mean, are there times when maybe the dishes don't get cleaned up right away? Or do they typically?
And the detective is actually giving Burke the benefit of the doubt because in interviews, you're not supposed to lead the victim. And the detective is leading the victim away. That's what makes it stronger. He did this twice. He led Burke away from the question. He led Burke away to apples. And Burke came back to pineapples. And in this case, he's giving Burke a way out. When did you have this? And Burke, I had tea with the Christmas party. Now I want to show you something.
Iced tea around Christmas time?
if you
how long does food?
Now you're talking about tea, and this is what I'm saying. You can only lie for so long before you get caught up in your own lies. Burke is saying to you, I may have had tea at a Christmas party. Patsy and John don't mention anything about tea being served at the Christmas party. It doesn't mean that it couldn't have. I'm not saying that. Talking about at the Fleet White's party. But that would imply that Burke drank tea at a particular time. And that would be at Christmas time. Why is that important? Well, we have this interview with Patsy in April of 1997, April 30, 1997. Okay. Just don't mean nothing. It doesn't. I'm telling you, it doesn't mean anything. I'm just kind of getting a baseline. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. You know, getting ready for the party in the afternoon, so on and so forth. Oh, I think this is talking about Patsy hosting a party at her house. And you're going to bring over. I think this was the Christmas party that they're hosting at their house. I think on the 23rd, and Linda Hoffman Pugh was helping set that up, which is when they were talking about, okay, why did if JonBenet would have used the restroom, then was Linda Hoffman Pugh able to get to that like she normally is? And Patsy said, I don't know. She was helping me plan the party. And so they're talking about that. I don't remember seeing him talking about the Barn Hills and the Barn Hills Inn. I don't remember seeing him, Patsy says, but John said he let him in. Okay. Kind of showed him to the Barn Hills. My dad said he remembers this man being there. And I think my dad said he invited him in to eat something, talking about some strange person that used to be with the Barn Hills. Okay. So Betty and Joe Barn Hills know him. And Patsy said, apparently, yes, they know this person. So Tom Trujillo says, okay, all right. How are you doing? Do you want to take a break? Patsy said, nope. You want to go to the bathroom or anything? Patsy said, nope. You want to get a drink of water? No, I've got a little left. Thank you. And Tom Trujillo says, got a little of your tea left. Okay. Patsy, let's move on to the 24th. So Patsy, in April of 1997, closer to May, summertime, getting towards summertime, is drinking tea. I'm just so we know. John doesn't mention anything about tea in 1997. In 1998, in the summer of 1998, this would be June of 1998. And Tom Haney says, let's take a little breather for a second from the pineapple and let's talk about the glass. Do you drink hot tea? Patsy says no. So in 1997, whatever she was drinking had to be warm, lukewarm, or cold iced tea. Or cold iced tea. Yep, I drink iced tea. Tom says there is December 25th iced tea year round, mostly in the summer. That's consistent. In April 30, closer to the summer, she's drinking iced tea. Okay. Or she's drinking tea. Well, we have to assume it's iced tea. Mostly in the summer. Tom Haney says, anybody else in the house drink any tea? Patsy says Burke drinks iced tea in the summertime. He does it in the summertime. And so we ask, mostly in the summertime. Tom says, can you tell me about the glass in the tea bag? How those got to be there? Patsy Ramsey says, I don't know. I make iced tea. I usually boil it in a pan, put the tea bag in and let them steep and then transfer it to the pitcher and add sugar. Yeah. The way I do it is, we got the Keurig, right? And, we just take the hot water from the Keurig and you just put since I have the Keurig now and it just turns it into hot water, I just put my cup under the Keurig, and I put my tea bag in, and then you put the hot water there, and you let it steep. You put your honey in or whatever else you're going to do, because I usually make like peach tea. And so you put the tea bag in there, you put your little honey in. You might use sugar, but I use honey. Put the honey in, and you close the top, and you let it steep. That's how but I do know the method of doing what they're doing, because that's how my parents used to make it. Putting it in the pot, but then they would transfer it to a glass. They would transfer that water to a glass with the tea bag and let it steep for a second. Whether they would put like ice in it or what have you is a different thing. Okay. 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 I boil it, blah, 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 blah. I add sugar, of course. How about that particular glass? And Patsy says, that's a water glass. I don't care. That don't mean nothing. Where would that normally be kept? They're calling attention to things that don't matter. That's a water glass. That's a big bowl. That's a big spoon. That's my fine china. I know that. I'm asking you, do you use it? Because they act like they don't use their stuff. You know how you might have fine china for something particular, but I use it. I use it for other stuff. Like this is, this is a bowl that you might use for guests. But in the way that our house runs, we just kind of use it for anything. I mean, mom didn't plan for us to use it that way, but it just, as the norms of the house go, it just became easier that way. So where would that normally be kept? Up in the cabinets over the sink, close to the bowls. Well, the bowls would be over here, glasses over here. So maybe the same height. Yeah, again, something that JonBenet couldn't reach on her own. No. And JonBenet didn't like iced tea at all, or tea at all. And this is Patsy saying no. And JonBenet didn't like iced tea or tea at all. I mean, do we know what all those people in the house that morning did? Because there was a bowl of something in that Linux China bowl, with stuff in that somebody had out. Did somebody pull all of this out then? Was that there since since that morning? Did you ask them? Somebody asked all those people, the two social workers. So we're trying to push the bowl and the tea. We're trying to push the bowl and the tea to the next day. I'm going to present something to you. I'm going to present something to you. Just give me a second. Because that's what Patsy said. John in 1998 says, so Lou Smith says, I'm going to straighten out the picture, so we'll want to look at a close-up of everything. This is a photograph of 417. What does this represent here? Now, 417, I think, is two pictures after the 415 when Patsy identified where their seating positions were, and whatnot. So this is still looking at sort of that sort of breakfast nook area, I believe. So John says, well, it's a large spoon, not a teaspoon. It looks like Patsy's good silver. I guess that could be pineapple. I can't tell, but it could be. Some people, blah, 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 pineapple to make it old. And there's this tea bag. So something to do with making the pineapple old. Maybe he's talking about the milk. And there's this tea bag. So this could be something interesting, because he's telling us possibly why somebody put pineapples in maybe milk or something like that. And then there's this tea bag in an empty glass. I can't tell. It looks like there's some milk or something. Now that tells me a little bit more. There is a tea bag in an empty glass, meaning whoever touched this, whoever had this, had the opportunity to drink all of the tea. And whoever did this not only fed JonBenet a snack, but they got a little something for themselves. And as it goes, well, this is one theory. And as it goes, this person, listen to me now, this is an intruder, right? This person felt so comfortable that they sat down and boiled tea in the middle of the night in the Ramsey's home. Now, tell me how stupid we are for not believing in the intruder theory. Tell me how. Go ahead and tell me how silly we are and all of that nonsense. Go ahead, tell me. And then follow that up by telling me what criminal you know, if you've seen in the history of criminals prior to unaliving the victim, sits there in the middle of the night with the victim in tow and makes tea. Not pouring tea from the store, turns on, maybe with the light on, turns on the stove and heats up water. You know how long you have to wait for water to heat up? About 10 minutes. So somebody is unconcerned. This is who we're talking about. We are talking about a criminal who is not concerned about time. A criminal who's sneaking around, taking JonBenet out of bed, and is not concerned about time because maybe this person would not have a problem being found out if Patsy or John or Burke got up in the middle of the night and said, "Hey, what's going on here?" They would not be surprised to find this person. That's what we're saying. This person is so comfortable in John and Patsy's house that this person would not be concerned, and nobody in the house would be alarmed to say, "What are you doing in my house in the middle of the night?" No. Patsy, I am your housekeeper. Trust me, we're cool, right? Yeah. You're my housekeeper. But why are you in my house at midnight? We cool, but we ain't that cool to where you can just walk up in my house in the middle of the night and just start feeding my daughter pineapple. We cool, but we ain't that cool. This person was not in a rush. They sat there and they waited for the tea to brew. 10 minutes for the water to even get hot. And then guess what? They waited for it to cool down. Because if you've had hot tea, you have to put ice in it multiple times, because when you put the first few cubes of ice in there, they're going to melt immediately. So you do one of two things. You can put ice in there that says, just say, I want to cool this down, or you put it in the freezer to cool it down a little bit, or because you have to let it steep. If you don't let it steep, then the flavor is not going to go in there. You're just going to have hot water. But so you have to let it steep. That means you have to give it first of all, you got to let it boil for 10 minutes. And then you have to put it in there. I typically let my tea steep, even when I'm using the Keurig, right? And it can heat the water up in like 30 seconds, right? Even at that, I typically let my tea steep for 30 minutes. Even using a Keurig, I put my tea bag in there and I put the top over it, because I put it in like one of those tumblers, and I put the top over. I put the tea bag in there. I put the top over, close the lid. So the little drinking lid, I close it, and I walk away for like 30 minutes so that I can make sure that my tea is fully steeped and all the flavors is fully just kind of, disseminated through the water. Otherwise, you just get water. It's going to be the tea is going to be very light throughout. So we're talking about somebody that waited 10 minutes for the water to boil so it can be hot enough. And then we're talking about somebody who waited probably about 10, maybe 20 minutes for the tea to steep in the hot water. And then you got to add sugar and everything else. Whoever this person was, they sat there and they waited 20 minutes. And whatever JonBenet was doing, JonBenet only ate one chunk, one or two chunks, a small amount of pineapple. What was JonBenet doing while this person was making tea? If they dragged JonBenet downstairs and set her down at the table on Burke's side and said, eat tea, eat this pineapple. And they made her the pineapple first. Probably took them 5 minutes. What was JonBenet doing? She was just sitting there watching them. Who would JonBenet be sitting there watching with patience after they just shocked her in the neck? Don't make sense. Don't make sense at all, does it? No, it don't. This person stood there and made tea. Let it steep, let it cool down, put some ice in it, let the ice melt, and put some more ice in it. That's what I used to do. Put some ice in it, let the ice melt, because I'm just trying to get it cold. I'm just trying to knock that heat out, and then put some more ice in it, and then the next batch of ice will stay. And then you will have iced tea to where it's cold. Otherwise, it's going to be hot tea. It's going to be lukewarm tea. So this person waited till the tea was cool enough to drink, and they drank all of it. In that big glass, somebody sitting there, yeah. In a glass that size, let's see if I can find a better picture. Okay, here we go. Pretty sizable glass. Either somebody sat down and they threw the whole glass back really fast, or they sat there and took their time with this. And from the way it looks like it's closer to Patsy's side. Or it looks like it's closer to like this little placemat that may be, because if I'm looking at this placemat, it looks like it's closer to this placemat, which is closer to Patsy's side, is what it looks like. But I think Burke's fingerprints, I think according to this, you have Burke's fingerprints, and then you have right here, you have Burke's fingerprints here and here, and then you have Burke and Patsy's fingerprints to suggest that you might pick up the cup like this and drink like that, which makes sense. You pick it up and you drink like that. With the bowl, grab it like that. Set it right here, boom. And that's primarily so you won't stick your fingers in the milk. But you set it right here. If you're carrying the tea, if you're carrying like the tea and then you're carrying the glass, you're just kind of boom and set them on the table at the same time. So Burke is right here and right here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if this tea is all gone, then somebody had time to sit there and just take it easy. They were in no rush. So JonBenet was hanging out with this person. JonBenet was hanging out with this individual. Mm-hmm. Old tea bag in an empty glass. I can't tell. Looks like there's some milk or something. What do you think? Who do you think would eat pineapple like that? Do you have any idea? John Ramsey says, well, the kids like pineapple, but that's a big bowl. And this is a big spoon. So he's trying to concede something while taking other things back. I can't imagine that the kids would have something like that at any time. Certainly not with iced tea. I don't think. They don't even drink iced tea. This is 1998. They don't even drink iced tea. I think they do not. Yeah. Lou Smith says, John, I just wanted to kind of check back with you. Now, these obviously are crime scene photos. And this is the condition that things are found when pictures are taken. We're trying to explain that, even in correlating it with your daughter. John says, yeah. Could that have been gotten out by someone who was in there that morning, I wonder? I don't know. Lou Smith says, I don't know. That's a thought. What do you think? John Ramsey says, I don't know. I mean, I don't, that's just a huge. Lou Smith says, you mean somebody who had been, it goes inaudible. John Ramsey says, well, the Fernies or the Whites, or there were a lot of people in the house that would be like us to, that would not be like us to leave that. Certainly not leaving the next morning of a trip to leave it like that out. That's a big bowl, whatever it is, if that's pineapple. And they asked John, do you recognize the bowl? And he says, oh, I don't know. I recognize the spoon because it's a big serving spoon. It's not like a teaspoon. And that could be one of our bowls. We had like white bowls like that. Patsy would recognize it for sure. It looks like our glass. So, and then, now mind you, this is on page 106. So mind you, John says, let me scroll back up to it. Well, the kids like pineapple. I can't imagine the kids would do, certainly not with iced tea. They don't even drink iced tea. That's John in 1998. He just said his kids don't drink iced tea. But just a few sentences later, Lou Smith says, who would drink tea with a tea bag and a glass? And John says, somebody who would drink tea, I guess. I don't know. I don't drink tea. Burke will drink sweet iced tea. I don't remember if JonBenet did, if she did. I mean, even for someone who's there, and to get out that big of a bowl and put that much pineapple in it and just leave it, that doesn't make sense. You just said the kids don't drink tea. Now you're rephrasing and saying Burke drinks tea, but JonBenet doesn't. That's consistent with what Patsy said in her interview. Okay. But you're pushing it toward the serving spoon as if that proves anything. It doesn't prove anything. I don't care if it was a bit, because look, when we used to eat cereal, typically we wouldn't eat cereal with a big spoon. You know what I mean? My mom would make us use a small spoon, but sometimes we get away with the bigger spoon. You know? Mike Kane says that was a serving spoon. John Ramsey says it's a big serving spoon. I mean, don't even have an answer. Mike Kane says taken out and put back in the refrigerator. Could that have been where it would have been? John says it's possible. Mike says any other tea drinkers in the house? John Ramsey says Patsy drank tea. She likes a sweet iced tea. Mike Kane says something. John says, I believe not so much, once in a while. I guess asking when. Lou Smith, maybe asking how often. Lou Smith chimes in and says sweet iced tea. You can put a tea bag, and goes inaudible. John Ramsey says, oh no, with sweet iced tea, you have to make the tea. And I don't know how you do it, but she puts sugar in it or something. It's a Southern drink, but no. I mean, first of all, it was hot tea. You wouldn't in that kind of glass. It was weird. That doesn't make sense. Now, this word Southern, it's a Southern drink. I knew he was going to say that. I knew they were going to say that. When we talk about going back to the note and we say something about John being using that good Southern common sense, this is a Southern drink. So only people who are not from the South make a big deal about things being Southern. You know what I mean? Like in the South, we don't go, oh, do you got that Southern drink? You got that Southern sweet iced tea? They don't. Because I mean, we all drink sweet iced tea. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Only somebody who's not used to being in the South, maybe like somebody from the South, or is appreciating the South. Like if you move to the South, like somebody who moved from maybe Michigan to Georgia and appreciated everything that Georgia had, would say, oh my goodness, I love how much land you guys have. I love it. I love the South and everything you guys have to offer. A little bit different than the North, but I love what you guys have. And you would relish in the Southern things and the Southern hospitality and the kindness of people. And so you would say things off the cuff, offhand, like it's a Southern drink. And so to throw people off the case and say that nobody likes me, the people who apparently were watching John for a long time and saw that he was in the South would say, use that good Southern common sense, which I would say, I'm not even from the South. But that's saying that whoever met John met him in Atlanta. That's where they would have met him. To not know him that much, that means they would have met him at least in Atlanta to identify him as a Southerner and assume him. But that's at the case as well that they don't know John. Because if they knew John, they would know John is from Michigan. So they would not call him a Southerner. If they took any time to get to know John, they would know John is from Michigan. And so they would not make that clumsy rookie mistake to call him a Southerner. That's how you know that ransom note is fabricated. Because anybody watching you that much, look, let me tell you something. I used to have to do research on executives. I would not make a rookie mistake on where they lived. You got all the information, especially if I have to go back to the research over and over again to say, no, this is who they are. This is their grandkids. These are their kids. Their kids went to these colleges. This is where they went to college. This is where they spent time working. And they're actually I think they're from Florida. So yeah, throw a little Florida joke in there when you go talk to them. Because it's my job to make my boss look good. And so guess what? I'm going to do the research and give her the research and say, this is what I got. So she can go in front of the client and look good. So if I'm studying you as a client, I'm going to make sure I put my best foot forward. And especially if I'm going to the lengths of basically stalking you, then I'm going to know that you're not a Southerner. I know that. If I'm that much to where I'm comfortable in your house, I know you're not a Southerner. Yeah. If I know your kids, dude, if I came in here for your kids and I knew JonBenet was the one who was going to send you up in arms the most, oh, I know you. If I know that you can call and get money from the bank the next day, I know you 100%. Stop playing with me. I think this is the last one that I wanted to read to you before I make my point and shut it down. Also in 1998, just a little further down. No, that would be certainly not a glass that with a tea bag in it. It absolutely doesn't make any sense for the kids to have left that there. Well, we can come back to that later, Lou says. I don't want to talk about that. I do want to talk about that a little later. You got any more questions? Mike King says no. John says, but I mean, it's strange. It doesn't, it says something inaudible. Lou Smith says, this is also another picture 416, which also shows the same bowl, only it shows the gingerbread house and there's some Kleenex on there and things of that nature. Now, this is a little bit off, but I wanted to kind of show this because this was interesting. Um, Kleenex on there and things of that nature. So I don't know, is that the gingerbread house that the children were making? John says, yeah, it looks like it. This was like in Patsy would, I'm not sure why a Kleenex box is there either. That's not normal for a Kleenex box to be there. You remember in the autopsy report how it said that I think there was dried up mucus on her cheek. And there was dried up mucus on her shoulder, on her right shoulder. And I was like, was JonBenet sick that night? Was JonBenet sick? Did she have the sniffles a little bit? Now we know she had a history of, sort of the respiratory issues and stuff like that. But was she sick that night to where did she have like a runny nose? Because I think she did have some, according to the autopsy, she did have some sort of mucus or like spit, that kind of saliva that ran down her cheek. But she also, I think she had some sort of mucus on her shoulder. That's why that meant something to me, because only somebody who is sick would carry around a Kleenex box with them. That means, if that's the case, that JonBenet was up and awake and the intruder got her up and said, you come in with me. Boom, hit her with the stun gun. But he didn't hit her with that stun gun before she said, hold on, Mr. Intruder. I'm sick. I need to blow my nose. And she got that box and said, now, where's your stun gun? Oh, yeah. And he carried her down the stairs and he said, hey, baby girl, we're downstairs. You can wake up now. And JonBenet woke up and, oh, stun gun. Don't worry about it. I know I was out for a couple of seconds, but don't worry about it. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. You think that's how it went? And they sat down in peace and harmony. He said, baby girl, this night is going to go down a terrible path. But I want to feed you some pineapple. Would that be okay? Absolutely, Mr. Intruder. Yes. Feed me some pineapple. Okay, I'm going to get this pineapple ready for you. And then while I'm doing that, I guess I'm parched. I've been waiting here for you for 5-6 hours. You mind if I make me a glass of tea? Now, it might take some time. It might delay what we got going on, but might take some time. Do you mind if I? Oh, Mr. Intruder, absolutely. Get your tea. Yeah, sure. I'm just going to sit here and, just twiddle my thumbs. I'll eat like 1 or 2 chunks and then, I'll wait for you. You get my point. This is the point that I wanted to make. That sometimes when you talk and you lie, you don't know what you're saying and the implications of that. John and Patsy both try to push the tea to the next day. They try to say, oh, did somebody else pick up this tea the next day? Did somebody else make the tea in the pineapple bowl and all such as that the next day? Well, that would be to forsake the fact that we found your fingerprints on this stuff. And more specifically, Burke's fingerprints are on this. So if we push it to the next day, are you saying that at some point in time, Burke was awake and came downstairs? Because you told me that Burke was sleeping in his bed, didn't wake up. Only got up between 7 and 8 o'clock to go to Fleet White's house. I certainly don't remember y'all telling me that you woke Burke up, because you're asking me, could somebody? I certainly don't remember you telling me you woke Burke up and gave him some tea. Yet somehow Burke's fingerprints end up on a tea bag, end up on a glass with tea bags in it of a drink that he likes. And I got Burke on camera telling me that he may have drank some tea at a Christmas party. But you told me he only drinks tea in the summertime. Well, you first said he don't drink it at all, but then you came back and told me he only drinks tea in the summertime. And guess who the only people in the house who drink tea are? You see, it doesn't quit. It doesn't quit. It just keeps coming back. The only two people in the house that drink tea are Burke and Patsy. What do you know? How did that happen? On a bowl and a glass that they didn't touch. Their fingerprints ended up there. I'm confused. You guys said that y'all couldn't even find the Barbie nightgown. I don't even know where it's at yet. Both of y'all's fingerprints ended up on the Barbie nightgown. That is wild. Both of y'all's fingerprints end up on the pajama pants. You two keep showing up. A woman wrote the note, looks like Patsy's handwriting. You two keep showing up. Y'all keep showing up. It's not even forced, but y'all just keep showing up. How is that? And Patsy tries to lie and say, oh, you know, he only drinks it in the summertime. And Burke says, no, I drink it in the winter. Can't get your stories together. I'm going to go ahead and close it down right there. Contradiction of the tea bag. The contradiction of the tea bag. It's all consistent. When you start looking at this case, it's very confusing. But when you dig, because of what you see in the media, and I'm not saying it's the media's fault, but what's reported, and that could be reported from, there's people on both sides, right? There's people on the Ramsey side, there's people on, pro Ramsey, people who are not pro Ramsey. And I guess what I'm saying is that if you go with the light version of the story, you will be tossed to and fro. You won't know what's going on. But when you start digging in and you sort of corroborate all of the statements and get together, you start to see that John and Patsy are saying something different from one another. It's like, okay. But then you start to see that Burke, when he talks, actually contradicts his parents. Quite a few times. We'll jump back in. But let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. And till next time, take it easy.